Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, 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 Haribo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavavrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanande.
So the first question will be asked to His Holiness Krishna-ksetra Swami, And the question goes like this. Commitment is an essential aspect of Bhakti Yoga. Commitment to Krishna, Guru, the process, our service, our ashram, our partner, our vows, the holy name. But because commitment is such a serious thing, and considering that we are all fallible souls, some devotees develop commitment phobia. How to resolve this issue?
Commitment phobia. Well, yes. Very nicely put question. Very comprehensive and recognizing the situation of, we might want to say, the postmodern, it's one of the postmodern illnesses, we might say. It's become almost a norm that one doesn't commit because, so many things can change, and how do we know? And this is good, and that is good, and the other is good, and so what did they say in America? The average number of different jobs one has in the course of one's working life is 16. 16 different job activities one will have, average. That means some are more. So it's difficult. It's the idea of commitment feels like something out of style. Religious life, on the other hand, is all about commitment. And here someone may say, yes, and indeed, what does Krishna tell us at the end of Bhagavad Gita? Sarva dharman prityaja. But don't forget what he says next. What does he say next? Mam ekam sharanam vraja. This word vraja, of course, makes us think of Vraja, the holy land of Vrindavan. I think it's Krishna's humor that he uses that word, because it's actually, it's a, technical grammar. It's second person singular imperative to go. So it's saying, it's a command, go. Where to go? Mom, to me. To you and some others, yes? So many others, so many gods. No, not so many gods. Mam ekam. Go to me exclusively. So what to do about commitment phobia? Well, as with any phobia, I would say first step is to acknowledge it and see why, try to see what it is, what's the dynamic of this phobia, what is the dynamic of the fear. It may be a fear of, I commit myself to something which ends up being the wrong thing. I committed myself to the wrong thing. Or I commit myself to the right thing, but the right thing is somehow also seems kind of mad. An example comes to my mind is that Lord Rama commits himself to follow the order of his father, an order which his father did not want to give, but was forced to give, that he should leave, he should go to the forest. For 14 years, and so on. Rama takes it in a very simple way. It's the order of my father, but so there's no question. But the whole rest of the world said, that's crazy. All of Ayodhya wanted to come with Rama. So part of our anxiety might be, well, I commit myself to something, and then it turns out to be against the whole world. I remember I was in Amsterdam in this shows that I'm a dinosaur, 1973, and our temple president was a very nice devotee, very committed, and he wanted to emphasize that commitment is important. And sometimes he would say, you know, my feeling is that even if everyone else leaves, I will stay. Even if everyone else leaves, I will stay. A similar sense of commitment, different sense of commitment we hear from Srila Prabhupada when he says, even if no one comes. So the temple president was saying, even if everyone goes, and Prabhupada says, even if no one comes, I will simply preach to the walls, wasn't it? He said, I will speak to the walls. Srila Rupa Goswami says, Utsaha nischaya dairya tat karma pravartanat. A very interesting sort of formula, and here I think what can help us to address this commitment phobia is to understand that it's a package that Rupa Goswami is giving. That if we can adopt the whole package, utsahan, enthusiasm, nischayat, conviction, and dharyat, patience, and tat karma pravartanat, doing the variety of activities that we do as devotees, and sangha tyaga, giving up unfavorable association or avoiding or keeping a healthy distance from unhealthy association. How's that? Sattva vritti is, my understanding, is something like doing honest labor. Sattva vritti. So this is a kind of package. We can, if we pursue the whole package, then commitment becomes not such a fearful thing. And in fact, we can take shelter of commitment. So when we make vows at the time of initiation, we can, when the going gets tough, we can take shelter of our commitment. The mind may say so many things, but our intelligence says, that's all right, my dear mind, but I've made a commitment. So don't mind, but I'm going to keep to this commitment. Those are a few thoughts. All right, please add something.
I think Maharaja answered beautifully, but just to build on some of his points, they say that your greatest fear also contains your greatest potential. So the things that we're fearful about are a good indication of the things that are actually going to bring us the greatest development in our life as well. And here's one way in which I tend to reframe commitment. What I say to myself first and to others who are scared about making a commitment is I say, it's a risk to take a risk, but it's also a risk to not take that risk. It's an interesting human psychology that we think to make a commitment is risky, but to not make the commitment is the safe option. It's a human psychology to think that doing something is risky, but not doing something is safe. When actually, if you think about it, they're just as dangerous as each other. Doing the wrong thing is dangerous, and not doing the right thing is just as dangerous, if not more dangerous. Once His Holiness Satyananda Maharaj had called me to discuss something, but before we got into the discussion, he always says, let me share something spiritual with you before business. And then he said to me, the pain of discipline is uncomfortable, but the pain of regret is unbearable. And so we often shy away from commitments because we think it's uncomfortable, as Maharaj said, we're fearful. But if we don't make those commitments, later on down the line, we'll look back at our life and maybe we'll feel regret. And that is unbearable, because then you can't turn back the clock and change it. So just to say one final thing, we are actually compiling a book at the moment called Planting Pearls. And it's based on a seminar that His Holiness Kadamakananda Maharaj did about commitments and vows. And the story that he used to tell in relation to vows and commitments is the story of Krishna planting pearls. And we know that a very famous story at Malyaharakund in Vrindavan, that Krishna wanted some pearls from the gopis to decorate his cows, and they refused to give. So then he decided to go to Nanda Maharaj's courtyard and plant pearls and nourish them with the milk of Raja's cows. And everyone was laughing at him, and sure enough, the next day those pearls that he planted shooted into trees of pearls. And so Kadambakanda Maharaj used to use this story to talk about how commitments are like planting pearls in your heart. And when you take those commitments and you nourish them and you support them and you invest in them, then those pearls of commitments lead to many, many pearls in your spiritual life. And so, so yes, this is the joy of making a commitment. It's a very beautiful life.
Thank you very much. We take one more question from the box and then we will go toward the devotees. The question is, what can we do to fulfill Srila Prabhupada yet unfulfilled mission of establishing Varnashram Dharma?
It's your turn. Hare Krishna. Yes, please.
I guess there are many ways to see, or many aspects to Varnashram. One aspect of Varnashram is obviously creating communities, self-sufficient communities, and all of those kind of things, where we kind of are not dependent on the world and we show an example of simple living, high thinking. So in that respect, definitely more communities like that. We have many communities like that all over the world, and devotees also experiencing the joy of that. I always feel like a little bit of a hypocrite talking about this, because I was saying in Zurich, I'm a city slicker. So I've lived my whole life in a city, so the thought of living in a farm is very alien, is very different. But I think the more that we can expose ourselves and understand the joy of that, that will be very nice. And more devotees participating in such projects would be beautiful. But the other aspect of Varnashram Dharma for all of us living here in the world is to actually understand our Dharma. Varna and ashram means Everyone has a certain occupation that they're psychophysically wired for. And ashram means there's a stage of life that if one embraces, then one can find incredible strength in that ashram in order to combat the material energy. And so one of the other aspects of varnashram is for us to all find the most ideal occupation and the most ideal stage and ashram in life. And if we're able to honor our swadharma, our varnashram in that way, in our individual life, then it will bring a lot of strength to our movement. So perhaps in our movement for a long time that was neglected because bhakti is always higher than dharma. And because bhakti is higher than dharma, there sometimes tends to be a neglect of dharma. But one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, he explains very nicely that dharma is like scaffolding. You understand scaffolding? I don't know the German word for that. There is.
Gerüst.
Yeah. So when you're
Baugerüst.
So when you're building a building, first you create scaffolding and then you build the building, and then once the cement is strong, then even if you take away the scaffolding, the building remains steady. So varnashram dharma is like that. It's really supportive. So yes, let us in our individual lives find our dharma, and then have communities where we also show varnashram dharma in terms of how all these ashrams and varnas fit together in a self-sufficient community.
Should I say something to that? So, regarding communities and country, farming, village, simple living, high thinking, etc. We know that Srila Prabhupada said so much on this topic, and as you said, you're a city slicker. I'm more of a suburb slicker. I grew up in suburbs in different places. And it's going to sound sacrilegious, probably, but to say this, Prabhupada spoke of farms and so on. He also did not grow up on a farm. He was also growing up in the city, which is not to diminish anything about Srila Prabhupada. What it is to say he gave us a challenge, a huge challenge, and he made it sound so simple. Just have farms with cows and grow grains and just work 3 months of the year. I think those who actually take care of cows, they really laugh when you say this. But I have a little mantra that I respond to devotees. Sometimes devotees come to me with their personal issues, personal problems, and say sometimes, oh, the situation is desperate. What do I do? My answer is serve cows. They go, what? Serve cows. Oh, you mean I should go to the farm and take care of the cows? Well, if you have that possibility, it might be very good for you. If you don't have that possibility, find some other way to serve cows. And you can start by speaking about cows, discussing, trying to understand what Srila Prabhupada spoke and wrote about cows. I think if we would do some of that to address the question how to promote more this varnashram concept, recognizing, as you're saying, varnashram, divya varnashram, is a scaffolding. It's funny, just as you were saying that, just before that, I was thinking, yeah, varnashram, it's kind of like a scaffolding, isn't it? And then you said one of the acharyas is saying that.
Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers.
One of his godbrothers, so there you go. So, cows. I think it's a nice thing to think about, and not just think about, but speak about, and not just speak about, but the term go seva is there. Seva is something more than, it's the sense of service that's ongoing, that's attentive service. And I'm saying this as someone who, I can't even say that I can milk a cow. I've tried, wasn't very successful. But as Bhakti Swami once said, he was giving a lecture in Mayapur, and he was really, really going in his lecture. He was shouting, but an ecstatic shouting of how we have to be serious in Krishna consciousness. He was shouting, and then suddenly he stopped and he said, "Don't mind me, I'm just preaching to myself." So like that, I'm speaking, maybe we can do something more in this direction, because as an outreach, as a movement, we want to walk our talk, and that's the challenge. We want to bring what we say in line with what we do, and what we do in line with what we say. Otherwise, who will take us seriously? So that's my thought.
Thank you, Maharaj. So we will now take a question from the audience. You please raise your hands, and maybe we can ask Krishna.
I have one more comment, very short. My god sister Urmila Devi and what is her name? Ruchira. Yes, Ruchira. They have written a book which, has it come out yet? It's on its way. It's called Career Dharma. And this is a very carefully researched book, which is intended to address our society, but also the wider society, to show how Varna in particular, they don't speak so much about ashram, but Varna can actually make sense in our present world.
They're doing a course in Zurich in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, they're doing a course in Zurich. I'm just finding out. So, be there or be square.
Thank you, Maharaj. The first question.
Thank you, Maharaj. Tulasi Rasa just informed me, just to add to that the book would be available on July 28th and 29th at the Zurich temple, because Mother Urmila is also coming, and we can also purchase the book. And she will also have a seminar, so it's a good opportunity for me. Thank you. And my question was just in relation to this, because it's a point I was thinking of last week, about how, because at the Zurich temple the devotee had raised this question of how Prabhupada wanted us to go back and have a simple life, the village life, and in line with Varnashrama Dharma, etc. And I was thinking how, and I was personally reflecting about this also, that this is something that Prabhupada desired, and where am I in my positionality in relation to this. And on a personal level, then I was thinking that somehow automatically or spontaneously, I think for me it's like when I get much older, then I would do it, in the sense that go away from the city and have that simple life in the village. And I was thinking, why is it so? And the thought that came to my mind is because we have to preach, and most of the people are in the city. We are a preaching movement, and we have to grow, we have to expand, and that's why. And also, I personally also grew up in a city village environment. I'm not really village, but city and suburban environment. So I don't know if you would like to address this, that because we are a preaching movement and we can introduce Krishna consciousness in such variegated ways, would this understanding be, of course for some of us it's okay that we do have this inclination, but it maybe is not for all of us, that we have to right away think that okay, we have to work towards this simple living, village lifestyle, or just meditate on Varnashrama. Just my personal reflection, maybe you could just shed some light upon.
So you're saying, okay, let's have the simple living, the village, etc. But I don't have to feel guilty for not dropping everything and going to the farm myself, because I'm part of the mission, which we are a mission, which means going out, and it means going to the cities, as Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur urged. Is that what you're saying? Yes, it reminds me, it was, I think, October 2019, I visited Gita Nagari farm in Pennsylvania in the US. Wonderful project in so many ways. And it was arranged that some of us go to the home of one Amish family. Have you heard of the Amish? Talk about simple living, high thinking. I mean, these people actually do it. But they don't preach, as far as I know. I mean, their thing is, they kind of stopped the clock in the mid-18th century. Well, they found they couldn't completely stop the clock. So anyway, we had a 2-hour session speaking with the father of this family, large family. They like to have lots of kids. That's one way they spread their movement, their Bhakti program. But two things struck me. One was, indeed, they are so very different from our movement, which is all about movement, and it's hard to imagine sort of doing what they're doing because of our global orientation. That was one thing that struck me, and the other was this gentleman explained to us that, I don't know, it was 1 or 2 years before, there was a fire in his chimney which burned the roof of the house. And he said, within 24 hours, we had a new roof. And how was that? It was because the whole community came together. And they determined the size of a community in terms of how far away one can live from the other side of the community, is if you can ride a horse and carriage for, I think it's 2 hours from one side to the other side of the community. You don't want it more than that, because they have their worship services in each other's houses. They don't, at least this particular community, they just meet in each other's houses, so you have to be able to go within 2 hours to the house on the opposite end of the community with a horse and buggy You have to be able in 2 hours. Anyway, the point is, the community came together. Within 24 hours, he had a new roof. And so the point of that is the sense of cooperation that's there. Where do we get that? That's so powerful. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maybe before we go further, I just wanted to see if maybe Badahari Prabhu or Vaidyanath Prabhu, maybe to give priority to you if you have any questions. No? Yes?
I've been thinking about this desire in the heart that we have to become devotees, and sometimes that's spoken of as it being planted, Bhakti Lata Beach, or association with that.
Uh-oh, I think I know where this question's going.
And I've also heard it spoken of as, I'm sorry, it's my question. You could have not asked me. But and I've also spoken of heard it described as when one gets association of a devotee, the desire to serve awakens. And that's one definition of shradha. And I've never heard that before. But I just anyway, what is this shradha? What is this bij? Maybe you could. What's our siddhanta on that topic? I guess.
Badahari Prabhu and myself had a 45-minute conversation on this yesterday, so I've shared my ideas.
Sorry, I wasn't.
You can share it with everyone.
So specifically today you're talking about the shradha, the Bhakti Lata Bij. What does that actually mean to receive the Bhakti Lata Bij? Yeah. So.
I think it's described as the rules and regulations of devotional service.
Yeah.
But I experienced after meeting Srila Prabhupada that there was something that was planted in my heart. So I was wondering what is that? Of course, it's anyway.
Yes. I'll share some thoughts and then Krishna-ksetra Maharaj will actually answer the question. In Madhurya Kadambini, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur begins by addressing this point. What is the beginning of devotional service? And he basically goes through a process of elimination. He says maybe the beginning of devotional service is that you did many pious activities, and then he says no, because piety is material. How can something material cause something spiritual? So then he says maybe it's Krishna's mercy. And then he says no, that can't be true because samoham sarva bhuteshu, Krishna is equal to everyone, so then everyone would get it. So then he says it can't be Krishna. So then he comes to the point of saying it's the devotee, because the madhyam makes a distinction. Prema, maitri, kripo, apeksha. He sees distinction. He sees who is open. And then by the mercy of the devotee, then one is receiving the Bhakti Lata Bij. This is confirmed by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who says, Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Hoya Sadhu Sang. That the very root cause of Krishna Bhakti is the association of a devotee. Of course, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur goes even further. He said, actually, if you want to trace it even further, we can say it's the devotee, but really what it is it's the bhakti within the heart of a devotee that impels them to give the Bhakti Lata to someone else. And in that way, his final conclusion in the Madhurya Kadambini is, where does bhakti come from? Only bhakti can create bhakti. Which is very, very beautiful, he explains. But what does it mean then that one receives the Bhakti Lata Bij? of course, yesterday we were talking about this debate that goes on about whether that bhakti lata is inherent within the devotee, or whether that bhakti lata is inherited by a devotee by association. And of course this, if I would like to say, Vaishnav debate is very much, as we were talking about, connected to the debate of whether the jiva fell from the spiritual world or whether the jiva is eternally in the material world. So generally, if you have that notion, that understanding that the jiva fell, then there will be an understanding that bhakti is inherent. And if you have the understanding that the jiva was eternally here in the material world, then it kind of fits with the theory that the bhakti lata is inherited by association. But leaving that debate aside, as Maharaj writes in the beginning of Padmanabh Swami's book, Vaishnavas like to debate and discuss these things. But leaving that aside, there's actually, I'll try and find it in a second, there's actually a purport where Srila Prabhupada talks about the instilling of the Bhakti Lata Bij. And I'll find it, but in essence what he says is that receiving the Bhakti Lata means you receive the process of devotional service, and you also receive the guidance of how to practice that process of devotional service, and you also receive the faith and the inspiration to begin that process. So when all three of those things, or all of those things, are installed within a devotee's heart, then we can say the Bhakti Lata now has a opportunity to flourish. And then Shravana Kirtana Jale Koriye Sechan, that by the watering of hearing and chanting, that Bhakti Lata is then growing and growing. So my understanding is that Ado Shradha, it's interesting when we say Ado Shradha, quoting Rupa Goswami, that it begins with Shradha. It's interesting that in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on the second chapter of the Bhagavatam, where he's commentating on Shrinvatam Sakata Krishna, he actually says there are not 9 stages, there are, I think, 14 stages. And he actually says there are stages before Shraddha. And he says that's the instilling of the Bhakti Lata Bij. And to instill the Bhakti Lata Bij means to get the process, the rules and regulations, the guidance, and the faith and inspiration to then engage in the process. I'll try to find that. Maharaj, you can add and I'll try to.
What could I possibly add? Except maybe the other famous verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Shradha Shabde Vishwas Kahe, Sudridha Nischoy, Krishna Bhakti Koile, Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. It's a kind of definition of Shradha. Shradha Shabde Vishwas Kahe. It's the same as Vishvasa. Well, what is Vishvasa? Shraddha Shabde Vishvashoy. Sudridha Nischoy. Nischoy, having the conviction. What conviction? Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. So if I do Krishna Bhakti, all karma, all action, all I need to do is Krishna Bhakti. That's essentially what it's saying. So the word Shraddha, there's a very nice sort of scholarly article was written by Gopinathacharya Prabhu. He researched as a philologist, how is this word Shraddha used throughout the Shastras? And he says, as I remember, it kind of boils down to the idea of having confidence that by doing X, there will be the result Y. If I do bhakti, then all of that's necessary to be done will be done. That's essentially what he came to that conclusion. Yeah. So, but to say a word about the debate, and I must little excitement in life. It's good to keep everybody awake. Actually, Krishna was pushing it over because he's saying, I want to see all the devotees while I have my breakfast. Yeah. A very general point I would like to make. We often find ourselves with questions of an either-or nature. Is it like this, or is it like that? Did we fall, or are we eternally here, etc., etc. You could go on pretty much ad infinitum with these either-or questions. And my personal sense, I like to think that it's some sort of wisdom that comes with years, with age, is I become suspicious of the either-or dichotomy and begin to wonder, is this a real dichotomy or is it a false dichotomy? Are we asking the wrong question? Are we thinking in a way which is preventing us from getting to the higher truth? And I think it's good to have this suspicion when we are confronted with these sorts of questions. Did you find it?
Yeah, this is Srila Prabhupada in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Just the reference, if you're interested, is Madhya 19:152. Srila Prabhupada says the Bhakti Lata Bij means the seed of devotional service. Everything has an original cause or seed. For any idea, program, plan or device, there is first of all the contemplation of the plan, and that is called the bija or the seed. The methods, rules and regulations by which one is perfectly trained in devotional service constitute the Bhakti Lata Bij or seed of devotional service. So he says the methods, rules and regulations by which one is perfectly trained constitutes the Bhakti Lata. The way I read that is that if you've received that guidance, the methods, the tools, and you've been trained, and you can then, with your faith, go on and practice it, the Bhakti Lata has been installed. That's how.
It's ongoing.
Maybe we can go to Vaidyanatha Prabhu.
Yes, thank you, Hare Krishna. The Bhakti Lata Bij. Yes, I have a very fundamental question which I've been busy with for the last decades of my life, actually. And still I haven't found a solution, so I want to...
And you expect us to resolve it.
Right. So Bhakti Lata Bij instills devotional service, bhakti. And Srila Prabhupada emphasized that bhakti is not just an abstract feeling, but is actually devotional service and practice. One does something for Krishna. Still, looking back at the past decades of my life, there are very few moments I've been able to actually do something for Krishna directly. Most of the time I've been busy maintaining my family, going to work and so on. So in practice, very few, Prabhupada, he founded this movement so that many people could have the opportunity to serve Krishna directly. But now that so many devotees live in the congregation, very few actually have had the opportunity to serve Krishna on the altar and things like that. So how can this be resolved, that one can be connected with Krishna even though one is not working directly for Krishna.
Thank you, Guru. I think that's connected to the previous question about Varnashram, that what we basically have to do is create communities whereby devotees can live with devotees, devotees can maintain themselves by doing devotional things, and basically we create a whole system whereby devotees don't have to then go out and work so hard in the world for so many hours in the week and be exposed to so many material situations and have to kind of do so many roundabout activities to maintain themselves so they can have a little bit of time in the week to do some direct service for Krishna. So I think that's why Maharaj was mentioning the Amish community is very, very powerful, because they basically create a community in which they maintain the economy within itself. And so basically what we then do is we are able to save time, save energy, and save space to actually just do devotional service. So I think it's very much connected, and this is it seems clear, this is why Srila Prabhupada emphasized Varnashram so much, because he knew the percentage of devotees who would live in ashrams as renunciates for their whole life is probably going to be very, very small. So the reality is that for most devotees, they will need to live in a family situation, and then that requires an economy, and that requires a certain social structure. So if we don't create our own economy and our own social structure, then it means we have to deal with the economy and social structure of the world. And then as soon as we do that, then we are in the land of Maya, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was told by Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. Never go to the land of Maya, which he was with. Calcutta.
Ooh.
Yeah. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, my spiritual master told me never to go to the land of Maya, and I followed his instruction perfectly. So, yeah. He said, because whenever I went to Calcutta, I always stayed in the Bagh Bazaar temple. And so I was never living in the land of Maya. So that is
embassy.
An embassy, the spiritual world. So to me it seems that is connected to the previous point of why Varnashram is so important. We have to create that opportunity.
I agree. But maybe I can add something to express a concern which relates to this, which I observe taking the present situation where, as you said, so many, most devotees have their families living, we say, outside. What is outside? What is inside? So there's a phenomenon which is kind of unfortunate, or maybe very unfortunate in some places, and that is that there's a kind of division between the temple and the community, where the temple is very focused on outreach and on maintaining itself and on maintaining the deity worship. And the householders living out are focused on maintaining themselves, their families, and I sometimes hear it, they feel alienated or in some ways neglected by the temple, such that they find it difficult to feel the inspiration to serve in the temple even on a weekend or one day of the week to do some service for the deities. This is I think in some places around our society the case. And I think it's a process of maturation that we want to learn how to sort of go beyond that situation. And what I also see is that because we are a preaching mission, naturally we are growing, and as a result, there will be naturally different communities developing within a given city, for example. And sometimes that's seen as a threat, when I would suggest we try to see it as an opportunity, that, oh, our movement is expanding. Here's a group of devotees. They feel like-minded in their way. Good. Encourage them to have their sangha. And here's another group. Instead of saying, no, you can't have groups. We all have to be just, centered in the temple. I think this is needing a lot of discussion and deeper understanding if we want to really expand the Krishna consciousness movement. Let me say one more thing on this. I want to mention a very nice experience I had just 2 or 3 weeks ago in Serbia. We were having our summer, they don't call it summer camp anymore, it's a retreat. And on the last day, I suggested to the devotees that let's do some imagining, let's do some fantasizing. And I suggested, let's imagine what things could be like in the Krishna consciousness movement. Let's just imagine. And I gave the example of Srila Prabhupada saying, only time separates me, or separates us, from so many things he described, temples, books, devotees, so many things that he was already envisioning. So I encouraged devotees to express their visions of how things could be. And it was amazing how responsive the devotees were. They had so many ideas. Some of them were, way out there, hard to imagine. But others were more down to earth, and they were like, yes, let's do this. Why don't we do this? And everything in between. But really, everyone got very enthusiastic. Something you can experiment with. You can try sometime with a group of devotees. Can be a very small group or a larger group. Krishna Prema Rupa Prabhu, what do you think? Is that a good idea to try? Yeah. Okay.
I think Prabhu wanted to respond. I think Vedinath Prabhu wanted to respond.
Yeah, thank you. Very good idea to first contemplate the solution.
Thank you. So we will take now a question from the Mataji side. Please raise your hands.
Speaking about the Bhakti Lata beach, I also was thinking about the other end, when it moves up and up and up and grows. And there is a question which came along my way. Somebody asked me, and I also would like to approach you with the same question. It's about what's the ultimate transformation. So it's like there is that point of ultimate transformation because we are here cleansing the mirror of our heart. And when is that point? Very, like switches.
I have a short answer. I'll let you know when it happens to me.
I have a theoretical answer. Of course, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is explaining the journey. Adosha tata sadhu sango ta bhajana kriya anartha nivritti shat tato nishta ruchis tata ata shaktis tata bhavas. Like that. So he's explaining that there are these 9 stages. As soon as one begins bhajana kriya and they're cultivating their bhakti lata bij through hearing and chanting, then it's said that at that moment anartha nivritti is activated. So immediately then the cleansing of the heart begins taking place. And what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains is that at every stage after anartha nivritti there is a certain amount of purification that has taken place. I can't remember the exact terms. It's like partial, pervasive, absolute. It gives different. But the way it's explained in Madhurya Kadambini is that Nishta is a real transformational point for the devotee. Because at that point, most of anartha nivritti has been completed. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, how do you know that you have reached the stage of nishta? So he says there will be an absence of 4 things. I could be wrong on this, but I'll say what immediately comes to mind. He says, first thing is there's an absence of laya, which means laziness. Then he says apratipati, which means, anyway, I can't remember the exact terms, but he says there's an absence of things like laziness, there's an absence of distraction while doing bhakti angas, there's an absence of absorption in sense gratification. So he says once there's no trace of these things in your spiritual life, then you can understand you're in nishta. Otherwise we may be in japa time one day and have a good japa time and think, maybe I'm in nishta. But there has to be a complete absence of these things. But even after nishta, there is still traces of anarthas. Therefore we hear of great saintly people slipping in their practice even at higher stages. But we can say that from nishta is a real transformation point, because from there, sometimes it's explained that from shradha to nishta is like an uphill struggle, very difficult. But then nishta is like the peak, and then from there it's like a downhill, almost much more natural. Because after nishta there's ruchi, there's taste, there's attachment, there's emotion, and from there prema. So, I guess nishta would be a real turning point in a devotee's life. Therefore we say, Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. That by regular attendance at classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart is almost completely destroyed, and irrevocable service to the Supreme Lord is established as an irrevocable fact. So it seems as though that, from what the acharyas say, is a huge defining point in the life of a devotee, nishta.
Thank you. Very beautiful answer. So we are slowly coming to the end of today's question-answer session. I think we have a kirtan day, but we could have a Q&A day I think it's very enlivening, and everyone is very fresh and attentive, and I'm sure we could go for hours. We have more questions here, and for sure, as more as we hear, more questions come. But we need also to give a good space for today's kirtan. So maybe we can have the last question for today. I take the opportunity, I have the microphone, so I can ask the question. If both of you could actually share your secrets to enter into kirtan.
Sharing a secret means it's no longer a secret. Yes, this is Bada Hari Prabhu's question. I personally just like to see other devotees, how they're absorbed in kirtan. And to me, this is the way in, so to say. I remember a devotee years ago saying in Mayapur, many of you have been to Mayapur and you know how in the temple there's Radha Madhava, Ashtasaki, and then perpendicular is Nrsimha altar, and to have darshan of Nrsimhadev, because he's kind of set back in the chamber, you have to be quite sort of opposite, you have to be quite in front. And that's a problem if you are coming for the morning darshan. So many devotees will be there. All you see is the backs of devotees. But one of my godbrothers pointed out to me, that is darshan of Nrsimhadev. You're seeing the backs of the devotees who are seeing Nrsimhadev. What's your problem? So similarly with kirtan, I think, seeing the devotees, hearing the devotees, because it's some kirtan, it's together kirtan. So the absorption is the sense of being together, isn't it, with others who are having the common interest of glorifying, pleasing the Lord.
Bada Hari Prabhu and myself, we were discussing about Vaishnava songs the other day, and I think it was Gaur Kishore Das Babaji who said, you don't need much to purchase love of Godhead, just 2 paisa, no? Something. You just have to, with 2 paisa, go to the market and purchase Pratna and Prema Bhakti Chandrika. And these songs are very, very powerful because they immediately place one in the mood of a beggar. So perhaps this is one insight for the day, that in between the kirtans, if we spend just a minute or 2 minutes reading the translation of one of these beautiful songs of our Vaishnava Acharyas, because they really put us in that mood of begging, that mood of desperation, that mood of wanting to connect, that mood of urgency, that mood of desire. So it seems as though that is really, otherwise I think it was also Gaur Kishore Das Babaji said, chanting can be like firing blanks. So when you have a shotgun and you fire blanks, it makes a lot of noise, but it doesn't really penetrate anything. And he also, I think he also mentioned about how if a lady wants to give birth, then she cannot give birth simply by imitating labor pains. Then must be also a child within also. So perhaps this is something we can do, and so grateful to Bada Hari Prabhu, Kosharupa Mataji for leading these sessions on the Vaishnava bhajans. So very, very beautiful. I was here yesterday and it was so nice. So I can take some of that inspiration. Hare Krishna.
I think we also need to hear a little something from Badahari.
I think what Krishna-ksetra Maharaj said kind of is a good point, that we're actually all in this together, and we need each other's help. We really need the association of devotees. We're all in this together, and we really need each other's help. We need each other's to help us focus and to, like sometimes it's explained as a group petition. So the government will listen. When there's one person, they may not listen, but when they've got an angry mob out front, they might listen. So we don't need to be angry. That wasn't the point. I think it's so important to support the devotees that are leading the kirtan, and that will also help you get into kirtan. And as one who is leading kirtan, it's sometimes you go somewhere and you chant, and nothing comes back. So when something comes back, when you hear the bhakti of the devotees, when their bhakti touches your heart, then there's an exchange, and then I think that's when Krishna comes to the kirtan. It's we're all little specks, very powerless to do anything. It's only if Krishna reveals himself that can we actually chant. So if we take shelter of each other in this kirtan, then that's a way to be absorbed.
Thank you so much. That's very beautiful ending of this Q&A session. Please all take breakfast and be ready. I think according to schedule we start at 11:30. No? Which time? 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. So yeah, there is a small time. Please be ready as soon as possible for starting the Kirtan day. Hare Krishna.